All set, Mr. Chairman.
You. Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
The Criminal Justice County Affairs Committee is all set, Mr. Chairman.
And Human
Set,
Resources
Mr. Chairman.
and Public Works.
We're all set, Mr. Chairman. Human Resource and Public Works.
Intergovernmental Affairs, Commissioner Marino, do we have any intergovernmental affairs this evening?
No, thank you.
We have no administrator controller issues, no unfinished business. Under new business, we have a budget amendment to consider, and then we'll have general public comment again, and then announcements and adjournment. Are there any additions or deletions anyone would like from the agenda?
Yeah, I'd like to make a deletion under Human Resources and Public Works. Our second item tonight was consider approving service agreement with Johnson Control, and that's not going to happen. So I'd like to pull that off the agenda.
Hutchinson. So with that deletion, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next up is general public comments. Is there anyone for general public comment? We have some folks online, correct? And this would be the time that they would push *9.
Correct.
If they wish to speak. I don't see anyone doing that. So we'll move along. There'll be another opportunity for general public comment towards the end of the meeting. Under presentations and special reports, Isabella County Administrator Controller Report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to start off by saying my apologies for missing the last meeting where I would have given my administrator controller report on that last meeting in December. So thank you all for understanding where I was and where I needed to be. So back in action here in January, you can see that we had to pull from the agenda the Johnson Controls agreement for the fire monitoring at the trial court. Our attorney had redlined the Johnson Controls agreement, and we talked about that at Human Resources and Public Works Committee. But JCI did not accept the red line changes that our attorney had offered. Normally vendors do. So at this point, we pulled it, and Facilities Director Steve Shoemaker is looking for a different vendor to satisfy that service for us. So in Mr. Shoemaker's absence, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what's been going on. He's been very, very busy. On your invoice list, you're going to see that he's completed the courthouse rooftop unit compressor project. That was one of the capital improvement projects for fiscal 23. You might have seen out in front of the county administration building on that west side, there was a sewer project that was not planned for, but Mr. Shoemaker left us in a lot better position than we found ourselves in going into that. He had snaked some sewer line, found out there were some tree roots that had grown into the clay tile, of course, outside. And now we have new PVC pipe, and especially important for cleanouts out there so that if there are future problems, we can better address those. Mr. Shoemaker's addressed the back quarantine kennel at the animal shelter. This is not the main kennel where we keep canines for public viewing, but this is a back kennel for if one animal would have a disease, we could keep them quarantined back there. If there was an issue or behavioral issue, if you will, with one of the canines, that's where they get stored when there's after hours drops, if you will, by law enforcement. That's where they drop them. And that floor has to be in a certain condition based on our annual inspection from Department of Ag, and needed to be painted. And so Mr. Shoemaker worked with the HAT staff to coordinate that getting done. And so super happy about that. It's been on the books for a while, happy to get it done. As you're very aware, one project well, actually 3 projects. They're all lighting projects that we pulled back into fiscal 22 to try and complete earlier. We're changing out the the fluorescent bulbs for LED in this building, in the county building, and at trial court. And so those projects are now done. And so hopefully we'll start to see the benefits on that electric bill. So what a happy facelift for those projects. Some of the things still forthcoming. We're working with EPA on a formerly leaking underground storage tank issue in our west parking lot. So this would be where, if you remember the annex building years ago that sat there. We do have it on the books to resurface that parking lot, but obviously working with EPA to make sure that they get their sampling efforts done before we make a pretty parking lot. So we'll be hopefully working in conjunction with them on that. They're just, I think, looking to take some samples to see if there is, if the plume is migrating at all from that. Pretty close to the river right there, so we do want to pay good attention to that. Lots going on, not to mention our major sheriff's office and correctional facility project. If this winter continues like it has, we very well may be able to break ground sooner than end of March. So believe me, all eyes are on that. One thing I wanted to make sure the board understood is the pace at which we might have to hold meetings if decisions are needed on that project. Clark Construction, the construction manager, came to me and said, Nicole, can you have the board pass a resolution that gives you authority up to a certain amount of dollars to make decisions? I talked to Tim Perrone, our attorney, about that, and he said, no, counties really don't do that, right? This board doesn't want to give up its authority to an individual, and the individual doesn't really want to take on that board decision making either, right? So I assured Clark Construction that the alternative to that would be for this board to hold what's called a special meeting, right? You have your set first and third Tuesday of the month for the rest of the year, but a special meeting would be a meeting of the board that is called with 18 hours of notice. And we posted, and we could hold it here if there's availability. We could hold it at the county building if needed. And we would need 4 commissioners in order to have a quorum, in order to hold a meeting and have business, right? And to operate. So just want to plant that seed. In the past, this board really hasn't met as a special meeting, certainly not calling that 18-hour meeting, but I just kind of want to plant the seed that we will want to look at a faster turnaround if one is needed to not stall that project, right? Yes, sir.
If we have to have the special meeting, will we have if we want to do it in the county building, will we have video, or do we have to do the video conferencing at the same time, as long as we have post the meeting 18 hours before?
There's no requirement to do the video recording. It's something we have chose to maintain through the after bringing it on in COVID. So there would be no requirement for it. I think it would always be our hope to try and have it there, just quite like we do for committee meetings, have maybe a webcam of the dais, and certainly the USB speaker.
I think there'll be some decisions that are pretty easy, just got to be procedural, and the other ones we might have to discuss for a while. So
Yeah,
hopefully
absolutely.
not, but I'm pretty sure there will be.
Yeah, not trying to force your hand or make you think that all decisions on that project need to happen quickly. I just know it will be to our benefit, to the project benefit, if there's a need to get a decision out of this board. It'll be worthwhile to meet as quickly as we can. They're very aware of our meeting schedule, so when pay requests come in, that there won't be any need to meet especially for that, right? We'll get in a groove with our normal meetings for that, but more so just wanted to make you aware of that, because it's not something we normally do, but we may need to. Nothing to be afraid of there. We'll have everything noticed accordingly. One thing I wanted to update you on for a while at the end of the year, towards the end of the year, I'd been pushing and wanting to recognize some of the ARPA lost revenue dollars on our books so that we would have those freed up to spend them on any governmental operations. And my big idea then was to send a large chunk of money to MERS to get out in front of that unfunded accrued liability. So I met with Treasurer Pickens, some of my staff met with him and some of his staff to say, does this still make sense in this environment? And with MERS, MERS has had a terrible year in 2022. If you hadn't heard, we're waiting for, the official word, but it looks like their return was a negative 10%, right? They assume a positive 7%. So that's actually a negative 17% swing. And we are a little nervous about what that means, not only for us, but for the whole retirement pool. So meeting with Treasurer Pickens and looking at that environment at the time, neither one of us felt like it was the best time to send a large chunk of money to MERS at this point. So we are still sitting on that. I would remind you, we have until December 31st, 2024 to obligate all of our ARPA dollars, and we have until December 31st of 2026 to spend it. So we're not quote unquote under the gun. And currently Treasurer Pickens is receiving some nice interest off of those dollars, right? They're not recognized on our balance sheet. So right now those dollars can't really help us as far as general fund cash flow, but as far as earning interest, they are. So that is nice. Oh, what else do we have here? I do want to talk about, in case you had heard, back in November, we had a little delay in getting some accounts payable checks out on a certain run. This run happened the day before Thanksgiving holiday. And then there was a little mail snafu. One of the most unfortunate things in that check run were that it had the volunteer payments for our foster grandparents and senior companion volunteers to the tune of over 50 of those individuals. And we went almost 3 weeks without them receiving their checks. So I just want to thank Commission on Aging for caring so much about the volunteers that serve with us in public service and trying to, get them a response, get them the checks that they needed. I certainly want to thank the Treasurer's Office for doing everything they could to work towards a solution, but also maintaining that important internal controls, right? Not going outside of what we should do to make it happen. So, and of course, admin staff for being ready to execute whatever the solution was going to be. I think going forward, we're just a little more cognizant about when we're running those to make sure we're not, getting involved in that holiday for the Postal Service. That's out of our hands, right? It's out of our control. So hopefully a better situation going forward on that. Also met with auditors are on site right now. They're auditing the financial statements of fiscal 22. They were on site last week and should be on site through this week, and looking to take a 3-week on-site audit down to 2 weeks. So that bodes really well for the accountants that we have on staff, being very well prepared for that. I believe that's a great sign. Met with the auditors, Treasurer Pickens and his chief deputy, Kathleen Schaefer, just to talk about what the scope of the audit is going to be, and if there was any issues that we have, just to be transparent on the same team. One thing we have had issue with, I'm sure some of you have seen emails about our flex spending cards still not arriving from the new benefit administrator Insight. 44 North is not our benefit administrator for flex cards. That is a separate thing from 44 North, but they are certainly helping us navigate through this with their expertise. When we don't have our flex spending cards, if you don't use it, if you don't understand what that means, basically that means that the monies that employees elected for flex spending for the year, they will right now have to access through a paper reimbursement system, right? They have to front the money, fill out the paper form and get reimbursed rather than using a very convenient debit card like we've been used to in the last few years. So we've tried a couple of ways to get out in front of this to no avail. I've copied you, I think, on the email that went out last week to show you some of the things we've been doing. So the banking card is not under the control of Insight. It's out with the banking institution. So not the county, not 44 North, not Insight can control what happens with those cards. So unfortunately, we're handcuffed now. I do not want to see any employees obviously put off a procedure or not pick up prescriptions. So please, if any employee is in that situation, please reach out to me personally. I am approachable. You can find me if I'm not on site. My staff knows how to reach me. So please, if you're experiencing an issue, reach out to me personally. Okay. Oh, let's see. One of the meetings I had last week was with Commissioner Embry, and we had we peeked under the skirts of MERS just a little bit, enough that our regional MERS rep said, hey, why don't I circle back and do a walkthrough of our annual evaluation with Commissioner Embry? And he had the forethought to say, why don't we include other people? I did send an email out to a few of you to see if that's something you wanted to do, but I thought I should probably open it up to the full board to see if that's something you're interested in. We are meeting January 30th. It's on a Monday at 1:30 p.m. in the boardroom in the county building. So if that's something that interests you, I would ask that you please let me know, because of course, if 4 or more of you are interested in attending, I think it does make good sense. Commissioner Jelezinski had suggested it to post it as an open meeting, because I don't know how you could sit through a meeting like that and not deliberate on the future of the county, right? That's just too enticing of a conversation. So if there's going to be 4 or more of you, we'll just notice it as a meeting. It'll be fine. So let me know if you plan to attend. Whew, that was a mouthful, but I was making up, right? I did have some to make up from last year too, or last year, last December. Holy smokes. I'm excited for 2023. Are there any questions?
Questions? Sounds like you've been busy.
Right.
We'll move on to appointments to boards and commissions. This evening, we'll consider accepting with regret the resignation of Jerry Nyer from the Isabella County Planning Commission effective immediately. Jerry Nyer, as you know, was elected state representative for this area. So congratulations to Mr. Nyer on that. Would anyone else like to speak on that item? If not, we'll keep moving on to committee reports. Finance and Administration Committee.
First item, consider ratifying and placing on file the December 16th, 2022 invoice list in the amount of $121,963.42. The December 23rd, 2022 invoice list in the amount of $584,341.46. The December 30th, 2022 invoice list in the amount of $214,548.33. The January 6th, 2023 invoice list in the amount of $861,615.19. And the adjustment list dated January 12th, 2023. Going through the, looks like we have 4 invoice lists. The small dog on the porch is the first one, and that's December 16th. I think it has 5 items. And I think most of these, as we go through all of them, are going to be very familiar to, except maybe for Mr. Embry, Commissioner Embry. But the one question I did have on this first one, December 16th, is I see that our legal counsel was paid $11,000 and October legal fees for multiple departments. And I know we've had other things that used to be paid by administration, and that was parceled back then to the departments. Now, I was wondering, is this something too that should be considered, or is this get caught up with indirect pays when that gets done?
It's when the invoice for attorney fees comes in, the attorneys do a great job of breaking down what they've been working on. So in the admin office, Jessica Jarosowitz takes a really great look at that invoice, and she can tell by what that description is, what department it goes to. Is it something the clerk is working on? Is it something that 911 is working on? Is it something admin is working on? And admin does get a lot of times we reach out with HR questions in general, and that always comes back to admin. So on that first page of detail in your invoice list, you'll see it broken down in different funds, if you will. I know those numbers may not mean something to you, but it's getting broken out by dollar amount to 911, to admin, to the jail fund, to Commission on Aging, to the MRF, to Parks and Rec, based on who called them. But you're not seeing that that detailed invoice isn't getting out in our AP system, because everything they work on, we don't want everything out there in the universe that they're working on. So it is something that we are dividing up. I think maybe we're doing a little more dividing up than used to happen. But maybe not. Same. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. Same dividing up. So, indirect costs is a great idea. It's just, you can always, I think, recoup indirect costs better if you can direct bill something to an outside fund rather than running it through that indirect cost.
Okay.
Great question.
Second list is the December 23rd. And again, looking through these are kind of familiar. A lot of drain improvements going on. The only question I had I have the question, and Nicole's already spoke to it, and that's the new replacement of the clay tile out in front of the administration building. And all I can say is that as we look at this, I know we're moving ahead with the new jail, but it's going to be many, many years before we can replace any other buildings. And as we work to finance the jail, we still have these obligations to keep our other buildings functional. But that's the only thing that crossed my mind on that. The next list.
Barry,
Yes.
I have a couple comments. Usually doesn't happen, but anyways, I was really surprised. I think that building was built in the 70s.
72, sir.
And I was really surprised when they said that had clay tile in it. I don't understand. If they were built in the 50s, I could understand that. Really surprised why they had clay tile in there. It just makes no sense in the world. So, especially with any kind of root system, because you have to have solid pipe, right? Those roots will do what they did. The other question is, and I don't know if you have the answer, or maybe we can get it a little bit later. Where are we at now? On the 19,000 for the wind turbine post-construction sound monitoring. I know we've had some questions, or I have had some questions. Commissioner Hutchison's probably had some questions too. Can you explain what that? I know there's been some complaints about the sound on the windmills. So I'm just kind of curious what the process, if you know what that was, or if you can come back for the next meeting to find out what if that involved purchasing equipment and actually go and do that, or are they hiring somebody to go and do that? I'm just kind of curious because I've had some complaints.
I'll get a hold of Tim Newport to see if he can't give you a better response next time.
Okay.
But what I understand, it is a third party that we hire, that the cost of which is paid for by, by monies in escrow. But it's always been that there's gonna be a post-construction sound study to make sure that those decibels you hear from the turbines after they're constructed are not outside of the threshold established. And that has to be very scientifically done. I think they came out, I want to say, a few times previous to this, and there was like too much ambient noise happening. to where they couldn't test it, or one time there wasn't any wind, and so they couldn't really test the noise that the turbines were making because that day it wasn't. But I'll ask our community development director, Cindy,
Okay.
Ford,
And-
and maybe educate us a little bit more.
Okay, I'd like to see the report too, or send it to us, just so I understand it a little bit. So, because I do get questions and that, yeah, Gary. It's,
Yeah, can he tell us exactly who's doing that report? We got a lot of people in line. I think that's people that go, so.
I will make sure he
I-
knows that's a.
I formally funding, wasn't it a company from California?
I feel like there's not too many of them that do it.
Yeah.
Now,
Right.
the company, I think that the developer had to put up the money to pay for the post-construction stuff, but they would not be the ones performing.
Wow, that's what I relayed.
We'll get the expert in here. hopefully.
It's been probably a couple of 3-4 months when Tim was here, and I asked if there was going to be a presentation by the companies. Maybe they haven't had the data they need yet to be able to give us even a preliminary report, but I think the board would be interested in that, only because there's probably residents out there that's still concerned about the noise. Any other questions dealing with the December 23rd invoice list? Moving on to December 30th. Again, it looks like very well-known bills. The only two things I brought up in committee is whether or not if you have a severance pay negotiated settlement, if we should be naming the individual in the minutes, or if that's privileged information. And then the second one was integrated solutions consulting. And I got the answer on that. That's the mitigation hazard plan that's being worked on. Any other questions with the list of December 30th? Moving on to the last invoice list then. The only thing I brought up there. See Union Township with a payment of 10,339. Those are monies that are being returned because of the border review. So we've seen a kind of a flow of especially housing units that are getting reduced taxes and return taxes, and whether or not that in Union Township is connected with that, or if it's people that come forward and ask for a reduction in taxes, but there was that dollar amount. Any questions with the January 6th invoice list? All right, moving on to the adjustment list. Looks like Gordon Food and Consumers Energy, either to get an early payment discount or avoid a late penalty. That's pretty much what the list consists of. There's a couple of small ones in there for mileage calculation or removing sales tax, but nothing earth shattering. Any questions with the adjustment list? We still have the January 12th. I forgot that we had 4 of them. Well, that's the adjustment list. Never mind. That we'll move that then forward to tonight's meeting. And I'll take the second item is consider approving a loan to the drain revolving fund from the general fund in the amount of $200,000 to cover current operations and request developing a long-term forecast for drain assessments connected to the drain revolving fund. We had Bob Willoughby here, and he made his presentation at the time. We didn't know if it was going to be a loan or just an outright transfer. And we still don't know how it's going to be the loan, but I'm thinking there's some thought that if it's a loan, it still goes to the fund and it's lost to the general fund. And I guess that is somewhat disconcerting, only because we need to preserve our general fund and be able to make the payment for the jail bond. And whether it's a permanent transfer or a temporary transfer, we do need pencil to paper and see what is the need for that fund. Just like the delinquent tax fund, there's a certain dollar amount that needs to be there. Otherwise, we have to pick up the difference. And so I think that pencil to paper means someone's gonna be working on an Excel spreadsheet and kind of give us a more definite picture for the future. If this is a loan, is there a formal loan agreement that is going to be passed to the Drain Commission office or?
I think the formality would come from the board's approval of the loan. In the way we talked about it in finance, it would be a due to, due from, which is in accounting terms, that's paid off within a year. So I think that just by motion of, by approval of the motion, I think that would be formality enough. This doesn't take a budget amendment. It wouldn't require, because these monies don't go through the budget, since it would just be a balance sheet item. We'd do, a journal entry to loan, to do the due to, due from, and undo that essentially when they pay it back. So really the only formality is the motion. I will say to the other point of the motion, about, taking looking at a review of those assessments and kind of developing a forecast out of that. We did talk to the auditors about taking a look at the drain revolving fund. I don't know if they'll be the ones to do that Excel sheet or not, to perform that function, but at least they'll help us with what we need to build into that sheet.
Well, kind of taking a looking at the big picture, drains are important. It's important to not have people's housing flooded. It's important to agriculture. It's important to industry. So we need to do that. And if the Drain Commission, apparently at one time they were operating on 117,000. That was increased in 2021 by 150,000. So now they've got 267, and now we're going to do another 200,000. And Bob spoke to this, that there's a lot of drains, 400 miles, over 400 miles throughout the county. And some of the drains where there's been a recent project automatically has monies budgeted for maintenance. But a lot of the drains are 40, 50 years old and don't have that. And I think the drain law allows you to spend $5,000 per mile, which then gets assessed back to the property owners that benefit from that. The problem that comes in is with the cost of labor and equipment and everything going up, the law's never been changed. So $5,000 is not enough to do this. And he's got a backlog of work that needs to be done and doesn't have the funds to do it. So if we approve this tonight, give him the dollars that he needs to catch up on some of these projects.
I have a question on that.
Good.
Is that something that could be the limit can spend on the repair and maintenance of the drains? Is that a state law? that
Drain
we
code.
could drain
Yeah.
code?
It's a
The
drain
state
law.
drain code.
And apparently, he can do more, but he can only assess the 5,000 per mile back to the beneficiaries. By having this fund, he can complete that. And eventually, if it's more than the 5,000, he can continue to charge that 4,000 to get caught up, to replenish the fund. But it's going to take a while, and it doesn't seem to be no end as you look at the bills for the drain work that's occurring in the county.
Yeah. Talk about that. You talk about the drain code, and they're only allowed to do so much per mile. And they've talked about wanting to raise that. It has to be done through, they have to actually open up the drain code. The problem is on that, they're afraid once they open it up, they're gonna change it so much that manage to agriculture will be taken away because a bunch of other stuff will be added to it. So they've always been kind of hesitant until they get the votes. They know they're not gonna mess with the drain code because it is so important. But the costs have been raising. They should have been raised, 10 years ago, but that's part of the reason that they haven't been doing it, is that there's so many groups want to get in there and change that and add it and actually take away. Yeah, I'd like to say, well, maybe we could charge them interest, but then I'd be paying the interest on stuff that I'm paying. So it doesn't really make much sense there.
No.
But that's a little bit of the history of the drain code. It's been there. There's been people that have been wanting to get, because it's a taxing authority. It's a huge power. Very few entities have the power to tax the way the drain code do. And some people, it gets a tax bill, they're not very happy with this. The drain commissioner at times, it's not a very popular job, but it's very necessary to agriculture and state of Michigan. So
That's a very powerful department. Not very many people realize that you can have a multi-million-dollar project started by just a few individuals with a petition and goes to the drain review board. And these taxes then, or the assessments get pushed back on the property owners, which can be quite costly. All I can say is in 1990, in that era, I ran for the Drain Commission office. It was the most stupid thing I ever did. Certainly being a county board commissioner is easier, but thank goodness we have a good department.
But it's one of the things I've sat on several drain boards before. And usually when it comes to a drain board, the drains are so bad. But by statute, you're not allowed to consider cost when you're approving a drain code. You can only look to see if it needs to be fixed or not, which is probably 95% is they need to be fixed, because once it gets to that. But it's strange when you're looking at, well, how much is it going to cost? Well, you're not allowed to bring that into the discussion according to the statute. So
I just want to clarify the numbers just a little bit. So the drain revolving fund was in the amount of 267,000 and then got the $150,000 increase a couple years ago. So drain revolving fund is sitting a little over $400,000. Drain Commissioner Bob Willoughby couldn't be here tonight, but I do want to make sure you understand that his Chief Deputy Drain Commissioner Carolyn Shoemaker is on the Zoom. She's not on the video right now, but she is on the Zoom and available, I would assume, if you have any questions. So I just wanted to point that out in case you didn't see her.
Do you have any questions,
Carolyn.
Carolyn? Don't hear any, so I guess we'll move this forward then, unless there's other questions here from the commissioners. It's important to keep the drain fund, revolving fund with workable capital. With this tonight's meeting.
The next item for the Finance and Administration Committee to put forward is to consider approving the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs lease amendment number P0003 with Isabella County commencing October 1st, 2022, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. This lease agreement, again, began October 1st, so we're a little bit behind on getting this caught up. But in our conversations with Ms. Nicole, I think this is something we should definitely do. I really do. I think it's a good thing that we offer a space of 500 square feet, something.
519 square feet,
Yeah.
sir.
Yep, and it's not a great amount of money that we charge. I think, like I said, it's just a good thing that we do this for the Veterans Affairs Committee, for the veterans.
The lease amendment, the biggest benefit is it does increase the amount the county's paid by something.
3%.
Not enough to pay for the jail, but
No, sir.
nevertheless, it helps.
Few extra
No,
dollars.
sir.
And I guess,
Move this forward to the
yep,
next meeting.
any other conversations about this, and we'll move this forward to the next board meeting.
And Mr. Chairman, that completes the work of the County Finance and Administration Committee.
Thank you, commissioners. And that brings us down to Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
All right, first up, is consider adopting County Board of Commissioners Resolution number 2023-01, all hazards multi-jurisdictional mitigation plan, and authorize board chair to sign the same. And of course, we have Griffiths here to lead us.
And thank you, commissioners. So this is our hazard mitigation plan that we try to keep updated every 5 years. It's important because it also gives us access to future grant monies. Part of the reason for it to come before you a little bit sooner than planned is exactly that. The city is wanting to apply for a BRIC grant. As I understand it, they recently passed their adoption of this pending the FEMA review. And we're asking that the county also consider adopting a motion to adopt our hazard mitigation plan. FEMA will give its final check off on it. And then we should have a valid plan for 5 years and hopefully give us access to some future grant monies to mitigate problems with floods and drains and all the other things that you've talked about tonight. So.
Obviously, very important to approve this resolution so that we can continue to get grants through this plan. And I hope everyone, read through the 240 pages before, if not, you've gotten to, 7 tonight to look at that. And then where I'll, read the 1-page resolution for it. Are there any questions about the mitigation plan?
In addition to grants, doesn't this plan, isn't it necessary to have this plan to be eligible for any federal disaster relief?
Some of the stuff is true depending upon the grant is the way I understand it. So we want to have this one. When we had our floods and our presidential floods, it was important that we had that. And it was also important that we've had the emergency operations plan that you guys just recently approved of as well. So yes, that's part of it. We want to be able to get recovery funds as well.
Pretty important then. And just a comment, but in the intro, I like this sentence. It says the ideal end state would be the total integration of hazard mitigation activities, programs, capabilities, and actions into normal day-to-day governmental functions and management practices. And Director Griffiths, I know you work hard to that end, and we appreciate that.
Got some great partners and some of the action stuff that we've had in the last plan. One of them was a downtown city lighting project. The city did take action on it. So we have great partners. All things seem to have a cost to it, but we try to do the low cost and free ones in public education and stuff. So appreciate your comments.
All right, are there any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move this forward to the regular session tonight.
Commissioners.
Thank you, Director.
Okay, next up is consider approving the William H. Martin Living Trust Farmland Agreement application and instruct Isabella County Clerk to forward the approved application to the MDA Farmland and Open Space Program. I will spend a little more time on this, so our new Commissioner Embry will understand that we get these quite often here. So this board has always been very supportive of farmland preservation. So what our committee usually does is just go through and make sure that the application is properly filled out, and we usually move them forward. But if you have any disagreements or something, you're more than welcome to say them. But usually we'll see these. We're getting a lot of them now because I think a lot of them are moving into trust. It's very helpful, especially for retired farmers that still have their land in there, because there's a formula that is on income. So if you're low income and you're paying high property taxes, you will get some relief from them. So the more income you make, the less value you'll get out of 116. But what it does is basically is you say your land is not going to be developed for anything but farming for the whatever amount of years you sign up for it.
At least 10, right?
Then,
Yep.
Yeah, this one's for 10. It's in Ottawa. 65.2 acres. They did actually, they're doing a split of 1.6 on it. So it's not the total land value on there. So that's it. And we'll just move on. So I guess, is there any more questions on this?
have any?
Okay, seeing none, we'll move this forward to the business session tonight. And Mr. Chairman, that completes the work of the Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
Thank you, commissioners. And that brings us down to Human Resources and Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first and only item is consider approving addendum S-COVID-19 premium pay providers of the current Region 7 Area Agency on Aging purchase of service provider agreement and authorize the board chair to sign the same. And we have Jennifer Crawford, our director, COA, to give us the background on this, right?
Sure. So in front of you, this is addendum S to our existing purchase of service or waiver agreement that we have with Region 7 Area Agency on Aging. And this existing agreement began October 1st and it goes through 2025. And this is just another addendum that they've done. I brought multiple of these addendums to you, and now we're to the letter S, which is exciting and amazing for our staff because they have again extended that temporary premium pay for those in-home aides that we have. So they're receiving a $2.35 an hour premium pay. And then also it provides 29 cents an hour to the county to cover any of the associated costs of doing this. So they have extended this again through fiscal year 23 for those staff. And this is for the waiver or purchase of service, but they have also extended it for our regular grant for all of our in-home aides as well, which is awesome.
Good news, right?
That's excellent.
Any questions or comments? Go ahead.
Not on this aspect. I just want to say that my wife's been dealing with a 98-year-old mother that's in hospice, and her monies are about gone and needs to move to Medicaid. The wife was just, they didn't know where to turn. It's called the Commission on Aging, and this is the first probably interaction that my family's had with the Commission on Aging. I guess I'm still kind of young. But anyhow, Kathy Campbell was just an angel, very patient, and answered all the wife's questions. And what a great service. And if you would thank Kathy, and I just wanted to call her out in public.
Thank you for doing that. Mhm.
Anything else? Seeing and hearing none, that will conclude the work of the Human Resources and Public Works Committee. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, commissioners. We have no intergovernmental affairs, no administrator controller issues, no unfinished business under new business. Vice Chairman Jelzinski, would you
Sure. Consider approving fiscal year 2023, a budget amendment number 2023-06, transfer general fund assigned fund balance for bond anticipation note to jail construction fund, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. I'm going to turn this over to Nicole.
Thank you, Commissioner. So this is one of those, in my mind, wonderful benefits of an enhanced relationship with the Treasurer's Department. Those of you who were in attendance at finance meeting on Tuesday know that after the meeting, Treasurer Pickens had said, hey, we're going to pay off this bond anticipation note. Don't you need a budget amendment for that? And I was thinking it would just be a journal entry transfer to move some money to get it paid off, but so then looking into it and having the auditors on site was kind of nice, right? Because you can just go ask them. Clearly, it does take a budget amendment. So let me explain and back up a little bit. December 6th of 2022, we closed on the USDA loan of $41.5 million. In 2021, leading up to that closing, we needed to be issued a bond anticipation note because we were spending money before that loan closed. So we took out in 2021 a $6 million bond anticipation note. And we've always known the first order of business when we close on the major $41.5 million loan was to pay off the $6 million loan plus interest. Remember, we got a fantastic rate of 0.99%. 0.99%. Yeah, it was phenomenal at the time, and still is a great rate. So within 60 days of closing, we have to pay off that bond anticipation note, which puts it early February. In anticipation of paying off the bond anticipation note, we said, okay, we better assign some fund balance. This time last year when the audit was going on, we better assign some fund balance, because what if we don't close on the $41.5 million loan? We still have a $6 million responsibility plus interest to pay back. So around this time last year, I took it upon myself, with your knowledge, to assign fund balance of the general fund to pay off the bond anticipation note. I think we even talked about it in finance. So in our audit document, you saw an assignment, and I can pass it around if you want to see it. This is from our fiscal 21 audit. Remember, because we're auditing 22 financial statements right now. We had of general fund balance $2.630,567 of fund balance assigned to pay off that bond anticipation note. And the reason that amount was chosen, because at the time we looked at in 21, what have we spent of the $6 million? We've got this much left. This is what it would take between what we've already spent to pay off the $6 million in interest plus interest. Interest is just over $91,000, if that is curious to you, if we pay it off by February 1st. But in order to pay it off, we don't have enough left in the jail fund to pay it off, right? We've taken a draw of reimbursement from the USDA on what we've spent previously, but we're shy just a little over 100,000, right? The interest plus a few dollars. So in order to pay off the bond anticipation note, we need to transfer monies into the jail fund, the new 466 fund that we created for the project. I would like to transfer the monies that have been assigned in fund balance to the jail fund to the tune of what's in your packet on that budget amendment, which I didn't realize it took a budget amendment, but thankfully Treasurer Pickens was patient enough to suggest to me that it did. And we could look into that and get it added, thankfully, to this meeting, because as you know, to pay that off before February 1st, there's not another board meeting. So we don't like to, we prefer things go through the committee, obviously, but you know, sometimes things need to be added. So thank you for letting us put that on this agenda. I do want to say, in addition to these monies, now they're assigned by me. You as the board can commit fund balance, right? And you as the board can undo that commitment. I just make an assignment, and that's why we believe it takes a budget amendment to move that money, because I can only assign it. This board has to commit it and take action. It's way bigger budget amendment than you give me the authority to make, right? So that's why I'm coming to the board with this. In addition to this 2.6 million of general fund balance that's assigned for the bond anticipation note, the board has also committed almost 3.5 million. It's just over 3.45 million to the jail project. Okay, you've done that of fund balance already. That's still in fund balance. We don't need that yet. We're not touching that yet as we go through the project. We will need it over the course of the next couple of years. But right now, I'm just talking about that amount that's assigned for the bond anticipation note. Any questions about that?
If not, we'll move this forward to tonight's meeting.
One thing I think it's important to say, we're talking about a lot of fund balance, right? We're talking a lot of fund balance that will go out the door. I do want to say, as of we don't have September 30, 2022 obviously wrapped up yet. It's not audited, but it looks like we are right around the 20% fund balance mark. If all the money that was assigned and committed to the jail project, which is about $6 million of general fund, left general fund balance, we'd still be right around that 20% fund balance mark. So I want you to understand that going into that. And that's pretty much industry standard. We hear about 18-20% is where fund balance ought to be. So remember, we've been saving for a purpose. This was that purpose. Sheriff's going to find us some money, so we don't have to use that all. But remember, this is the purpose that we were saving it for. So, yeah.
His pockets look kind of empty.
Wear a hat, maybe pass that hat.
Yeah.
Eric, maybe pass your hat.
Waiting for a plate to go around, yeah.
I understand that that was brought by Ottawa County about the opioid settlement money, which was holding it up. And it was ruled that it couldn't be held up anymore. Do you have any more information about when we'll start getting that?
I understand from the action in court last Friday that we could receive now our first opioid payment as early as the end of January, like January 30, 31st, as early as that.
Cool.
This was the only holdup, as I
Right.
understand, in receiving those. So
Yeah, because we all anticipated it before this.
last fall.
Wait,
Yes. Yes. Well said.
Thank you.
Okay, and that item will move forward tonight, as Vice Chairman Jelzinski stated. No more discussion on that. We'll move on to general public comments. Is there anyone for general public? Online.
There's two people, but they don't have their hands raised.
And this would be the time if those folks online wanted to speak, they would press *9. I don't see any indication that they've done so. So we'll move on to announcements. Commissioners, any announcements? Commissioner Engler.
Yes, and Administrator Frost might correct me in case I'm wrong, but on Thursday, we are having a material recovery facilities meeting at 8 o'clock. And I think Jake said that there might be some more information on feasibility study. So I'm not sure, but if anybody wants to attend that, that's an open meeting. One other question is sometimes my calendar gets kind of crazy and I wanted to check. I had it down here and I was looking on the website. Do these committee meetings have to do the 18 hours posted for like the material recovery or not?
If it's a special meeting outside of the meeting schedule that they adopt at their organizational meeting each year, then yes, it.
Okay,
would-
we adopted it in our minutes, but I didn't see it on the website. I didn't know if that something that needed to be posted or something, or
Oh, the Thursday's meeting should be on the website.
I
So if
might be
it's not,
blind. I didn't see it on there, but I usually always double check. That's my schedule.
you go into the recycling page.
Did not go to the recycling page. I just went to the general. So just nothing.
Thank you for that. It should be out there.
I just wanted to make sure because like I said, I'll check on the recycling page, but I just wanted to make sure that it was posted in case it was not. So still got time yet. So
Thank you. Yes, we do.
that's all I had.
Other announcements, Commissioner Hutchins.
Yes, we have a commissioner that has a birthday today, and I'd like to thank him for all of his years of service, Mr.
Happy birthday.
sir.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Aw.
I'm happy I made it.
Beats the alternative. Sure. Any other announcements? I have one, as Commissioner Marino, the birthday boy mentioned earlier, the opiate settlement, that challenge, was thrown out of court Friday. That challenge from Ottawa County, so it should pave the way for those funds to come to this county. And if I remember correctly, Isabella County used to receive 108,000 a year for 18 years, I believe. And so Administrator Controller Frost and myself and Sheriff Maine and Kerry Curtis have had one or two preliminary discussions on what to do with that. And I think our feeling is whatever we do, we want to put it to a very effective, good, sensible use for that money. Whether that's treatment or whether it's prevention, and prevention in my mind could include law enforcement, whatever that is. But I think also we're going to have someone from community mental health sit in on those discussions. And we're meeting here shortly. Jessica's been getting a meeting lined up for us towards the end of this month or the beginning of February. So I guess that's all I had on that. We'll let you know. Eventually there will be a proposal that'll come to the board on that, but we've had just maybe one or two very preliminary discussions on what to do with those funds.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd just like to point out that I got a MAC update and they do have a toolkit about this very thing and could be a good starting point.
Other than that, tomorrow night here, or not here, but at the county building, the Council of Governments will meet and their guest speakers will be Roger Hauk, our newly elected state senator, and Jerry Nyer, our newly elected state representative. So 7 p.m. tomorrow in room 320.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
But tomorrow night is Township Association.
Okay. Association.
The first month of every quarter is MTA. It's usually the same people. But the other 2 months are the Council of Governments.
Okay, but the guest speakers will be Jerry Nyer and Roger Hauk, so that should be. all right. And that's all I had. Any other announcements? And seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Been supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Adjourned at 5:01.